Okay, so today's topic is how to effectively network. And the reason why I wanted to do this topic 就是如何有效的 network 是因为很多 consulting recruiting network 或者 networking 是一个很大的一部分。然后呢，即使你不做 consulting 的 recruiting、finance recruiting 或是其他的就是 recruiting 都是需要 networking 的。所以呢，我当时也是特别怕 network， 也不知道怎么去做。那这一篇就会讲，就是怎么样去最有效的可以去 network。那我们就开始吧。然后今天全程我也是主要会用英文讲，然后呢之后有什么问题也可以用中文去补充，然后解答。那我们就开始。有些如果新的朋友。So just a quick introduction. My name is Jasmine, and for those who don't already know me, I'm currently a third-year commerce student at Smith School of Business at Queen's University, and I'm also an incoming summer business analyst at McKinsey, and I also had a bit of experience in finance during my second-year internship at Burgundy Asset Management, and I also do health e-commerce on the side as well. So today's agenda is going to look at networking as an overview. So looking at introduction to networking, networking in the consulting context, and also how to manage your network. And then specifically looking at consulting, the consulting networking process. So how to find networking prospects, cold emailing and LinkedIn emailing, and then best practices to do during networking, and also best questions to ask when you're networking and ways to follow up. And then we can wrap up with just next steps and Q&A as well. Okay, so to start off, so your networking or your network is basically your web of personal and professional relationships and contacts. And if we look at the characteristics of networks, it is wide-reaching, so you can build relationships that will span across industries, geographies, and time. It's also continuously evolving. So my network today is very different from my network a year ago when I was recruiting for finance. And that's just based on your own needs and reaching out to different types of people. And it's also surprisingly fragile. So your network does require diligent care and attention, or else they risk falling apart, and it's quite fragile. So you do need to maintain a lot of care. So looking at networking's importance in consulting recruiting. So in the application stage, we kind of talked about this in last week's or 2 weeks ago's session, where firms evaluate candidates primarily based on the below 3 factors. So your GPA, your professional experience and clubs, and then also networking. So networking allows you to actually be picked out in the large number of applications and resumes, and it gives you a ticket to the first round interviews. And then the best people to network with are consultants with 1 to 2 years of experience at the firm, since they're the ones who are screaming through your resumes. So strong networking can actually make up for a weaker GPA or professional club experience. And so it gives you that first round interview. Of course, if you have all 3 being very strong, your chances of getting that first round interview are greatly increased. But you can also get that first round interview just with very strong networking as well. So that's how it kind of fits into like the entire consulting recruiting. And then network management is the process of developing and maintaining your professional relationships that make up your network. So there's 2 parts to this. Number 1 is growing your network. So this is getting to know new people and making new connections through work or through school. And the second part of network management is cultivating your network. So actually developing and maintaining personal and professional relationships in your network. And so network management, there's basically two approaches that you can do this through, and they have to be rooted in your own personal goals and objectives. So on this side, you see one way to do this is by increasing your network size, and then also increase your network quality. So the best is, of course, to be in this fourth quadrant, the all-star kind of quadrant, where your network is large in size, but it's also very high in quality. Of course, number 3 also works well with some people as well. I would actually consider myself in the number 3 quadrant because my network size isn't that large, but I'm trying to build very high quality contacts that will be able to help me a lot in the future. And so growing your network, if you want to increase your network size, there's different ways that you can do this. Number 1 is leverage your existing connections. So ask your existing network to provide you with access to their network. Number 2 is finding common ground. So this is through attending industry and networking events that center around the topics that you're interested in. So for example, attending consulting nights or consulting conferences. And then number 3 is finding people who inspire you. So you can actually reach out to people who you find very inspiring or interesting, and set up a coffee chat with them that way to be able to grow your network. And in maintaining your network, you want to move from low network quality to high network quality. So again, 3 ways that you can do this. Number 1 is tracking your interactions. So making a spreadsheet and actually keeping track of who you've been talking to and how long has it been since you've last talked to them. Also be consistent. So schedule a regular time to kind of catch up and be sure to follow through. So for example, once every maybe 2 to 3 months, you might want to check up on a network and just to catch up and schedule a call. And then also just go above and beyond. So just the small things, like maybe sending them occasional gifts, or during the holidays, sending them happy holidays, Merry Christmas, or Happy New Year's messages also goes a long way in building the quality of your network. Okay, so that's enough with just like the networking as like an overview. And now let's jump right into, in consulting, how to kind of approach networking. So this is the general process of networking during consulting. And so you have your info sessions, so your virtual info sessions or your in-person events, or even sometimes case competitions, are all great places to get to know other people and industry professionals and to actually start networking. And then the next step would be to individually reach out to those people that you've identified at these events and schedule coffee chats. So cold emailing or through LinkedIn messages, or you can even do warm referrals. So for people who you already know, that can help you connect to other people. And then the third portion of networking is the follow-up part. So if you have any other questions, you can follow up with your network contact, or you can ask them to refer you to their colleagues or to other people. And you can also reach out to them to do a mock case as well. This is quite effective, and most people will say yes. And you also can update them on your recruiting process. So in the whole process, you're trying to aim to make at least 1 to 2 touch points with each contact. So the info session, and then reaching out to schedule 1 coffee chat. That would probably be 1 to 2 touch points. And if you can get another coffee chat in there or schedule a mock case, that would be an additional contact point. And it's pretty important to start networking as early as possible, just because if you start networking during the recruiting season, everyone is reaching out during that time. And so the chances that you'll be able to make a lasting impact are greatly decreased. And these industry professionals are very busy. So you want to get started as early as possible so that you'll be more memorable to them. Okay, so how is the best way to actually find networking prospects? One is at firm events and sessions. So many new hires of the firm or consultants with 1 to 2 years of experience are present at these firm events. And so they are the ideal targets for networking because they actually screen the resumes. And the best thing to do at these events is to ask questions. So at least get your name out there and speak up. Just ask any question to the firm reps and try and make a lasting impression. And then also very important is note down all their names. So take a screenshot or just keep a note and note down their names and their contact information, or if they don't have the contact information, just their names, and search them up on LinkedIn afterwards. So that's really important. I often forget sometimes when I'm doing this. And then the second place to find networking prospects is through LinkedIn. So doing a quick search on LinkedIn, searching for the consultants who work at the firms that you're interested in. And then ideally, you're going to filter for people who go to the same school as you or who went to the same school as you, because alumni are a lot easier to reach out to. And then always send a personalized message when connecting with them. And some people, they don't really respond to LinkedIn that much. So email actually might be better, and you can use email hunter tools. My favorite one to use is hunter.io to find their email, because usually people don't put their email in their LinkedIn bios. So you can actually use these third-party applications and tools to dig up their emails. And then the third way to find networking prospects is through warm contacts. So people in your network, so upper years, family and friends, to introduce you to those who they know who work at the firms that you're interested in. And then this is usually done through a warm introductory email. And it's really important to also take the initiative to introduce yourself and set up a coffee chat afterwards as well. So yeah, being proactive and taking the initiative to reach out and to express your interest during networking is going to be very key in the recruiting process. Okay, so this is just a cold email and LinkedIn template that I have been using. And this is just to kind of give you guys an example of what it kind of looks like. Obviously, you don't need to go by this exactly, but I find that this works quite effectively. So if I'm sending an email, I like to keep my subject very clear and to the point so that they know exactly who I am and what I'm interested in learning about. So for me, I would be Queen's Commerce student interested in McKinsey. And I would say, hi, so-and-so, my name is Jasmine. I'm a second year going into third year Queen's Commerce student. I'm currently preparing for consulting recruiting this summer and would love to hear or learn more about your experiences at McKinsey and with recruiting. Was wondering if you had any time this week or next week for a quick chat. And it's always best practice to have like a signature. So this is what I use in all my professional emails. It just makes it very clear who you are, what program you're in, when you're graduating, so the year that you're graduating, and your contact information as well. And this is a LinkedIn message, so same thing. And one thing that you can notice with these messages is that they're very short and sweet and to the point. So you don't need a long email. If you do have a long email, they probably won't read it. So just get your point straight across and clear. And then always make the timing flexible, as flexible as you can, because these are very busy individuals. So for example, I said anytime this week or next week, and that just opens up a lot of flexibility for them. Okay, so now let's kind of look at what happens and what you should do before, during, and after a coffee chat. So after you've sent the cold email or the warm introductory email, ideally they'll reply and say, okay, yes, I'm free then. And then you can schedule a chat and a coffee chat. So before the coffee chat, always send the calendar invite. So this is always on you and your responsibility to actually schedule it in. And then always prepare your questions beforehand as well. And do a little digging. So research their background and their experiences. You can look at their LinkedIn, see where they worked before, if they have previous work experience. Where did they go to school? What clubs were they on when they were in school? What team are they on currently? What types of projects have they been working on? Try and find as much information on them as possible, because those will all be able, you'll be able to ask them about their experiences. And then also prepare your tell me about yourself and what you're interested in learning about and why. So even though it's not like a professional interview, it's always nice to come prepared in case they ask, okay, so tell me about yourself, just so I know a little bit more about you. And even if they don't prompt you to tell them about yourself, you should always introduce yourself, just so that you seem very professional and well prepared. And then during the coffee chat, always be a few minutes early. Don't be late. That's the worst thing that you can do. And then warm up with introductions. So introduce yourself and what you're interested in learning about, or why you reached out in the first place, or how you kind of found them. And don't forget to express your gratitude. So always say, thank you so much for your time. Like, I know you're super busy. Like always kind of say that at the start. And throughout the coffee chat, make sure to listen very attentively and to make follow-up comments and ask follow-up questions, because that just shows that you're actually listening and that you're actually engaged in trying to keep a conversation flowing. And then after the coffee chat, you always want to document your coffee chat. So document, take note of what you guys talked about. And this is really important because it allows for better follow-up. Because when you're following up, you always want to reference what you last talked about so that they remember who you are. So you don't want it to be general, you want it to be personalized. And the only way you can do that is if you document what you guys talked about. And then within 24 hours, you always want to send a thank you email or message. And depending on how the conversation went, you can ask for a referral. So if the conversation went really well, I think they'd be more than happy to do a warm introductory email to their colleague or to someone who they know who's doing hiring or who's on the HR side of things. And you can talk to them and expand your network that way. Okay, so now let's look at some best practices of what you should do during networking and what you shouldn't do. So for the coffee chat, phone calls are the preferred medium when you're reaching out to people who you're not too familiar with. Usually people don't really like to show their face if it's like a cold email. But with alumni, sometimes they'd be willing to. And then for warm contacts, Zoom usually works well, or video conferencing. And also just always be flexible and offer just different dates and time options for your networking contact, and keep your chats 20 to 30 minutes long. And the main goal that you want to keep in mind is you're trying to have a good conversation. So the goal isn't just to get through all your questions. So even though you have a list of questions prepared, you don't have to get through all of them. It's more important to be engaged and ask follow-up questions depending on what they say, and just give off a feeling that you're very easy to talk to and you're very engaged and interested. And then, of course, thank them at the beginning and at the end of the coffee chat. So for what not to do, first of all, don't be late, and try your best not to have to reschedule, because it gets pretty annoying if something comes up and then you have to reschedule. So try your best not to have that happen. And don't ask any sensitive questions about salary, promotion timeline, and work hours or work-life balance. So for work-life balance, sometimes it is okay to ask if it's like alumni and if you're having a very good conversation or you've gotten closer. But right off the bat, sometimes it's a touchy subject that you don't really want to ask about. And don't be overly casual in your language, your dress, or your tone, because even though you're trying to establish a personal connection and to grow closer, it's safer to be on the more professional side when you first start off, or at least for your first touch point with them. And then super important, don't ask for a referral or a favor right away. So at the end of the coffee chat, you should always do it after the coffee chat, because they might find it very pressurizing, and find it hard to say no to. So even if they do say yes, they'll kind of be uncomfortable with it. But if you include it in your email or your thank you email or follow-up email afterwards, asking for a referral, I think it's just a lot more suitable, and it allows them more flexibility in saying no as well. Okay, so I get this question a lot. So what questions should you ask during coffee chats? Because there's a lot of like pretty generic questions that a lot of people get a lot, but you still do want to ask those questions. But you also want to make your questions more thoughtful and on a deeper level if you want to make a lasting impression. So there's 4 different types or buckets of questions that I usually like to ask. It's kind of funny, like buckets, as we're in consulting. But the 4 buckets are recruitment and asking about the interview process, the firm and the culture, about project work and staffing, and then also personal or deeper level questions. So for recruitment and interview process, these questions are very good to ask if the person you're talking to is actually involved in the HR or the recruiting process. So asking about what does the recruitment timeline look like? What does the interview process look like? And then also like tips on how a candidate can really differentiate themselves in the interview process, or just top traits that the firm is actually looking for in a potential hire. These questions are very important to ask because they can actually give you a lot of insight on what's the most important thing to display during an interview. And then if they are a new hire or they just recently finished the recruiting process, other good questions to ask are actually about their recruitment process. So when they were recruiting for consulting, what were the most helpful resources that they found helpful? And then also what was the most challenging aspect of case prep? So those questions are really nice to ask maybe people who you're a bit closer with, such as alumni or upper years who went through the process as well. And then for firm and culture, you want to ask questions. Obviously, you want to know what is the culture like at the firm. But that's a really difficult question to answer because culture isn't something that you can really describe. You have to experience it. So instead of asking right off the bat, like, oh, what is the culture of your firm? You can word it in a way like, what kind of individual really thrives at the firm? Or what type of person really thrives at the firm? And then always ask about mentorship or career support programs, as well as diversity and inclusion initiatives, because a lot of consulting firms have put a lot of effort and money into making these programs really good. And also ask about what the junior culture is like. So is there a lot of interaction between junior and more senior members of the firm, or is it more hierarchical in nature? And then of course, what differentiates this company from other firms? And you can also ask about like what industries or what types of projects does the firm focus on, and also about global opportunities as well. And then the next type of question to ask is about project work and staffing. So ask about variety in terms of project work, and was it what they expected when they first came into the firm? Ask about what a typical day on a project look like. And the mix between quantitative and qualitative work, and also how closely do they work with clients, and what does the final deliverable actually look like? And in terms of the staffing model, you want to make sure you know, is it a local or a global staffing model? And typically, how do you actually get staffed on a project, and how long does a typical project last for? And then also, are consultants generalists or specialists? And is there a requirement to specialize down the road, and how long is the specialization process? And then the last type of questions is probably the favorite questions that consultants get asked, because it's personal questions that are deeper in level. So one question that I find is really nice to ask is, how do consultants provide value to industry professionals as someone who is unfamiliar with the industry? Because as a consultant, you're working with CEOs and top management who have been in the industry for a lot longer than you have. And so they are actually the experts of the industry. So how can you actually provide value and help them on a project if you don't know as much as they do? So that's like a question that shows that you're being very thoughtful, that consultants like being asked. And then also ask about like, what has changed about how you work since you started? And also ask about like the learning curve. Is it a very steep learning curve, and how did they get up to speed with all the work that they needed to do? For more senior people, you can ask about what has kept you at the firm, and then also what has pushed you into the area that you now specialize in. Of course, favorite, most interesting experience or project you've had or worked on is a popular question. Biggest challenge that you've encountered, and COVID specific question that's a favorite is like, what's the biggest challenge or change at the firm after COVID? So those are kind of the questions to ask. And I'll be kind of uploading these questions on Xiaohongshu later on as well, so that you can go and kind of reference them later. Okay, so after asking all those questions and having like a good coffee chat, afterwards, don't forget the thank you email. So again, this is just an example of like a short, sweet message that you can say, that you can send them afterwards. So within 24 hours, something like this. Thank you, it's so great like talking to you today, and then just wanted to send over a huge thank you for making the time and answering my questions. Your tips on case prep was super helpful. Definitely going to take your advice and get started right away on live case prep. So you can see that also here, this is like a Facebook Messenger. I talked about like really appreciate you answering my questions about OW and the employee resource groups. So you can see that these are very personalized messages that reference what you talked about during the coffee chat. So that's always really important. You always kind of want to reference back and make it as specific to your chat as possible. Okay, so ways to follow up. So after you've had the coffee chat, you've sent the thank you email or message, how do you follow up with them afterwards? So one way you can do this is through questions and referrals. So reach out to them if any new questions come up. Just send them a message or send them an email, and I'm sure they'll be happy to send like a quick answer and a quick reply. And that just helps to keep the conversation going. And then also, if the conversation went well, you can ask them for who else would be good to talk to and ask them to connect you with them. The second way that you can follow up is by reaching out to ask for a mock case. So if you reached out at the start of the recruiting session, you can actually reach out again, maybe if you're not yet prepared to do a mock case, just to kind of catch up again, and if you run into more specific questions. Otherwise, if you're ready to do a mock case, you can for sure like reach out and schedule that as well. And then the third way to follow up is to update them on your recruiting process. So let them know how it goes with your first and second round interviews. And even if you get rejected in those interviews, you can still reach out to them and say, oh, I would like to like schedule another chat to maybe go through some of the feedback I received and how to best incorporate them into my next interviews. And it's really important to remember that even if you don't receive an offer at their firm or like this season, there's always the chance to receive help in the future if you decide to recruit next cycle as well. So always try and update them on your recruiting process, no matter if you get the offer or not. And following up will allow your networking efforts to actually materialize into having a lasting impression and to actually make these contacts useful for you going forward. Okay, so today was like a shorter kind of session, but I think we really covered just like everything about like networking in general, but then also how networking fits in within consulting. And we can wrap up with just like next steps and Q&A. So for next steps, as a refresher, if you weren't at the last session, you can take a look at where you are in the process of consulting recruiting. So for month one, it's learning like what's expected at each stage of the recruiting process, starting to network with upper years, alumni, industry professionals, and starting to prepare your application materials. So your resume, cover letter, and transcript. And then also start to do like your first couple mock cases with people who you trust or with upper years who you're comfortable with. And then in month two, you'll be working through cases and case drills, aiming for 3 to 5 full cases per week with a range of different people, starting your behavioral prep. So crafting your tell me about yourself and your stories or answers to common behavioral questions. And then also continuing to network and to maybe ask for mock cases or just to chat with more people. And then month 3 is, of course, incorporating all your learnings and feedback into your interviews. Continue doing full cases or case drills to strengthen the areas that you're weak in. And then ongoing is, of course, continuing to just read the news, be caught up on current events, practicing your consulting communication, and then do mental math drills as well. And also just attending these future sessions that I'll be holding I'll be trying to just give you guys a lot more like useful tips and information as well that is specific to kind of each component or the different components of consulting recruiting. Yep, so a lot of this information 很多就是今天说的一些信息我也会在小红书上发，所以也可以就是之后去翻一下，然后呢那些所有的都会在And that is it for today's session on networking. And we can open the floor to any questions that anyone has about networking or just about the general consulting recruiting process as well.